Hey guys, it's Michael Schwartz from Gun Owners Radio. You're about to watch a really cool interview with John Petrolino, a really good friend of ours who is a fantastic writer. But I wanted to just take a minute and tell you about all the changes that San Diego County Gun Owners has helped make when it comes to CCWs. If you want to get your California CCW here in San Diego, just go to our resource page, san diego county gun owners.com/CCW. You can also find that link on the homepage. We have a 15-minute video and we have a good cause worksheet that helps walk you through the entire process, exactly what to do, how to apply, and what to write for your good cause statement. We're very proud of the progress that we've made when it comes to CCWs in California, and we want you to be a part of it. We also have in-person seminars where we teach you how to apply and about the entire process, and we have online seminars as well. You can find the calendar to attend those seminars on our website. Again, san diego county gun owners.com. So check it out, get your CCW, and don't forget to become a member of San Diego County Gun Owners today for as little as $10 a month. Thank you. Enjoy the interview. Hey everybody, Michael Schwartz with Gun Owners Radio. Welcome. Gun Owners Radio every Sunday in California from 4 to 6 p.m. You can listen to us live if you're in the San Diego area on 1170 AM, or if you're anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, you can find us on any podcast provider, or go to our YouTube channel, gunownersradio.com, youtube.com/gunownersradio, and you can watch us live, or you can see old episodes. It's a 2-hour show. We talk to all kinds of great people in the Second Amendment community, politicians. We do gear reviews. It's a lot of fun. We have just added Gun Owners Radio Magnum, which is what we're doing here today, where we get more in-depth with some of the leaders in the Second Amendment community, really get to know them, what they're doing. It's a little bit more of a thorough interview, hence the term Magnum. So check us out, like us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and look forward to having you as a listener. So today we have a really cool guest, John Petrolino. He's a merchant marine, an author, he's a firearms instructor, he's a resident of a horribly anti-gun state of New Jersey, which in California, if I say it's a horribly anti-gun state, that means something coming from California, but in a lot of ways, they're worse than California. John's written a ton of books. You can see a lot of interviews with him. He's very vocal and very active in the Second Amendment community. You probably know him best from his book, Decoding Firearms, an easy-to-read guide on general gun safety and use. John, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Michael, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you here today.
You bet, man. Thank you so much. So tell us about the book. Let's start right off. Tell us everything we need to know about your book.
Okay, so you got the title, Decoding Firearms, or I'll hold it up for you so you guys can see. Decoding Firearms, an easy-to-read guide on general gun safety and use. And the book is kind of a 101, a level introduction to firearms. And the way I came about to write the book was I was developing a class that I was working on to teach my own material. And while I was doing that, I was also working on editing somebody else's book. And there were some things that I caught there as well. I would do this differently or I would do that differently. And I didn't pay much heed to it, and I didn't really start to connect the dots until I finished the class. I got done writing my class, and I said, I want something to give my students kind of as a handout to go along with as class materials. So I decided to start jotting down the different things that I thought that I would want a student to walk away with. And by the time I got done, it wasn't a pamphlet or a handout. It was a 266-page book, and that's what we have here today. So it's got some content to it. There's over 115 original illustrations in there. You can see them as I go through the book. And all of those illustrations were made, I'd say 95% exclusively for the book, and about 90% of them I created. A few of the pictures some other people took that I was in or whatnot. And it kind of just started out as a handout for students, and it turned into a full-fledged book.
And that's an idea I think I don't know, took my first class 20 plus years ago, and I've seen a lot of classes. I've taken some classes. I know a lot of instructors, and your book really is. Everybody gets a 3 or 4 page handout when you go to a class, and I can't believe this is the first time anyone thought of truly making a thorough, like you said, 101 level manual. I mean, it really is it's a semester of gun ownership. You sign up with the professor, and then you go down to the bookstore and you buy the book for the class. And the thoroughness of it is fantastic. So when you teach classes, you go chapter right through this book and use it for your students.
So actually, the way the book ended up getting put together was I took the class outline for my class and I went down each topic, and the book is actually set up in the exact order that the class is set up. So what benefits me is if I'm going to be doing something with a student and some training with them, I'll say, hey, if you're interested, because I don't make it required, but if you're interested, try to get a copy of my book. It's on Kindle as well if people aren't into hard copies of books, or get the paperback and read these chapters. And what I feel is it gets the information to the students in advance. This way, when we get into discussing those topics, it's more conversational, and it's not just the first time that they're having a chance to look at the material. And this way, they get to go over what we're going to go over. We go over it, and then when they get home, they have the book to read and reread and review. So in essence, yes, the class that I teach does go through the book chapter by chapter, but I don't necessarily do it with the book in hand. I actually have a workbook that's separate that I have subsequently made to go with the class. So now there is a free workbook, and if students opt to buy the book, of course I encourage them, but if they don't want it, I don't force it on them.
So if you're not taking John's class, if you don't live in New Jersey or the New Jersey area, and you're not taking your class, you're out in the middle of the country somewhere, you're interested in gun ownership, you buy this book. What do you hope that person walks away with, without taking a class, just reading the book?
Just reading the book, the core safety stuff. So there's a large emphasis on safety. The whole first chapter covers just safety. And then subsequent chapters after that, we get into the nuts and bolts on what firearms are, how they function, and things like that, how to load and unload them. But for me, the core of the book is the safety, and that's really what I think is important for gun owners and gun users to embrace, is that we have a responsibility to be safe with our firearms. And that's what I would like people to walk away from the book.
That is, the gun safety really is the difference. Hitting a target comes, drawing from concealment comes, but at every level, the absolute foundation of gun ownership is gun safety. And it's really, for me, boils down to the 4 rules. If I see somebody, I don't care what level, if I see somebody violating one of the 4 rules, they look amateurish. They're dangerous. So when the book talks about gun safety, does it first off, does it use the 4 universal rules, and does it go beyond that?
Okay, so I kind of scaffolded after keep your finger off the trigger, point it in a safe direction, and unload it until ready for use. So I'm not using the Cooper rules. What I do draw, though, from the Cooper rules, which is the 4 rules, is treat every gun as if it's loaded. I talk about that in the book as a mentality that is important to embrace. And I feel if you embrace the mentality of treating every firearm as if it's loaded, you're not going to put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to shoot. You're not going to have it loaded until you're ready to use it, and you're always going to keep it pointed in a safe direction. So, and that's 2 different camps, because I'm a NRA instructor and a USCCA instructor. And for people that take classes, USCCA kind of focuses on the Cooper rules, and the NRA focuses on those other rules that I was just discussing, as well as the storage and use rules. So that's what I draw out of. And then for my storage and use rules, I really go into a bit of in-depth on all of that as well. So for the 4 rules, the treat every firearm as if it's loaded, that's something that I pulled from that to say this is a mentality to adopt.
Nice. So on Amazon, the summary for your book was really, really well put. It had a number of questions. One of them I thought was particularly interesting. Are you a member of the media and wish to better understand how to reference firearms when reporting on them in news pieces? Do you, which I think is excellent, genius idea, and very, very good use for your book is the media. We've all read articles and just cringed. I know a ton of gun owners. You talk to gun owners, and eventually they'll end up, they have some story about how they sent a letter or made a phone call to a local news station, and it just absolutely burns us up. Do you have any stories? Have you heard from media, or do you know any reporters who called up and said, "Hey, thanks for the book," or "I read in your book this, and I wanted to expand on it"?
I haven't had that happen explicitly, so I'm not aware of any member of the media having gotten my book and cleaved knowledge away from it. But to your point, talking about that specifically is everything that you said, because I've read so many news stories and so many articles where things are just grossly misrepresented, either represented because they don't know what they're talking about, or because there's a narrative that they want to push or fill. And I have been that person that have written to several reporters and said, hey, what you're talking about is technically wrong. And I've gotten a multitude of responses back ranging from, well, that's what was in the press release from the police department, so that's what we used. And I'm like, well, it's wrong, so maybe you should get in touch with the police department as well. And there's the customary no response. I get a lot of that. So once in a while, the writers will get back to me with something, but it's not usually oh, thank you for letting me know. And I'm usually very open about it too. Says, look, if you have questions about these things when they come across your desk, send me an email. I mean, yeah. I know I don't know you, you don't know me, but I'll be happy to help you make your article factually correct and cut out the magazine clip conversation and the full semi-auto talk, and really help you be poignant about what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I just read an article the other day. It was a crime report, and they said that the person arrested had a Glock 19 and had a semi-automatic and had a 9mm. He had all 3 of those things, 3 separate things.
Well, if you did that in a Venn diagram, they would be correct. It's a 9mm, it's a semi-auto, and in the middle you have the little triangle. So very, very good.
Maybe
redundant,
that's probably what the reporter was doing. She was probably describing the Venn diagram.
Yeah. So
we'll give her the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly.
And I'll tell you, if you're listening to this interview and you've wondered, hey, what can I do to be more effective or to help the Second Amendment? Do what John did. Reach out to your local media and just say, hey, I'm an enthusiast, I'm an expert, I have a certification, or I have this much experience, and here's my contact information. If you just want to reach out and verify, hey, I'm doing this report, can I make sure that it's accurate? I too have found that no matter what their political, no matter how their reporting normally is, they do want to be accurate. That's something that's drilled into journalists. Believe it or not, they do want to be accurate. So I applaud you for doing that, John. And like I said, maybe we should do like a fundraiser and just see if we can send copies of your book to like every news station in every anti-gun state or something like that.
I'm on board. Sign me up.
So the last chapter, so it's a lot of it's a manual. It's a lot about gun safety. It really is soup to nuts. You know, the ABCs of gun ownership. I think it answers a lot of questions, especially for newer gun owners or people that are interested in becoming a gun owner. The last chapter, chapter 15, discusses the Second Amendment. Now, there's a lot of ways to approach the Second Amendment. There are a lot of ways to explain the Second Amendment. But what ways or what points did you make, and what perspective did you use when explaining the Second Amendment to? I'm assuming the audience is intended to be people that have never really thought about the Second Amendment before.
Yes. So the book is apolitical. So I'm not trying to push a narrative. Throughout the text, there are references here and there to areas that might be hostile to the Second Amendment, and I may throw around a couple of states, but overall the book is aimed to be apolitical. So when I talk about the Second Amendment, I talk about it in context of this is everyone's right, and it's for everyone to have. It's not for just, Republicans or just Democrats or independents or Tea Party people. And when I wrote that chapter, I tried to make it kind of light and airy in a sense of here's just a small taste, and put a little seed there to let people think and ruminate and perhaps go and read on their own a little bit further. So, for example, just breaking down the, shall not be infringed, and, saying for a well-regulated militia, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's being necessary for the security of a free state, right? I did it all out of order. But, whose right is it? It's the right of the people. And what shall not happen to that is infringement. And I break down even the word infringement and talking about how infringe means to encroach. So if I'm standing too close to you, Michael, if we're in a social setting, technically I'm encroaching on your personal space. In essence, I'm infringing on your personal space. So when you look at the Second Amendment from that perspective of what is an infringement, what is an encroachment, now you can sit there and look at the different laws and regulations and the rhetoric that's out there. And does this encroach? Is this standing too close to me? And the answer to a lot of that is yes, it is an infringement. Yes, it does encroach on the right. And I put a little bit of that into chapter 15. And again, I tried not to make it so over the top and in your face. I do talk a little bit about the Heller decision in there. But really that's there to give somebody the idea, well, maybe I will read about the Heller decision or the whole Heller decision, if not a synopsis of it, right?
So, so someone who, the ideal, they're thinking about getting a gun. They buy your book, so they're informed. They finish chapter 15. What do you hope they walk away with after reading chapter 15 about the Second Amendment?
I hope they walk away with the perspective that, hey, yes, this is a right. It's not a privilege, and that those words towards the latter part of the Second Amendment of it's the people's right, which shall not be infringed. I hope that people walk away with a better understanding that, a lot of these laws are infringing on you. And more so, again, the chapters to be a seed. So I want that seed to sit with that person and then let them go ahead and then do their own research. And if they want to look up articles that I've written, there's plenty of stuff online. And, you want to get the in-your-face rhetoric from my perspective of a pro-freedom or a pro-civil right perspective, because that's what this is. It's not pro-gun or anti-gun. What we're actually talking about is pro-freedom, pro-civil rights, or anti-freedom and anti-civil rights. So you either support civil rights or you don't support civil rights. And in my opinion, the laws that come out that infringe on gun rights are anti-civil rights laws.
That's a fact. I don't think enough people treat it like a civil right, which in fact it is, and a lot of the treatment it gets from politicians and media and the general public, unfortunately, is that it's a right you have to apologize for. It's kind of it's a second class right. Like, well, you can own guns, but like they have to tolerate. What do you think happened? What is this kind of a broad question, but really, it's meant for the Second Amendment community. But what went wrong? Like what happened? What's wrong in this country? Where do we go off the rails? What do we need to be doing better? What went wrong?
That's a loaded question, no pun intended. That's a magnum question. I'll try to give you a magnum answer. If you look at the history of gun control or anti-civil right laws, this all dates back to post-reparations America and when we had freed the slaves. And a lot of the laws that came out were designed to keep firearms from those people and out of their hands. So your earliest gun control or anti-civil right laws were aimed at the free slaves. And if you fast forward, even you go into the gun control laws dealing with machine guns and during the time of Prohibition and things like that, and they're saying, oh, you can't have these machine guns because they're just, decimating everybody and the scourge of crime and violence. I think at that time, and don't hold my feet to the fire, but there wasn't actually a ton of so-called shootings involving machine guns. There were just a bunch of high-profile ones, right? So it's no different than what you're seeing today. A handful of high-profile, situations drove the narrative. From there, you fast forward to the 60s, and then I believe in New Jersey, 1965 is when New Jersey really pushed their gun control laws, which a lot of those got adopted on a national level in certain regards in the 1968 Gun Control Act. And when these laws were proposed, they were proposed to be, in New Jersey in particular, the laws were proposed to be keeping firearms out of the unfit element of society. So that's meaning people with disqualifiers such as, before the domestic abuse laws and things like that, but people who were criminals that had felonies, known as undesirables, things like that. Even if you look at those laws from 1968, they too were very anti, persons of color. I mean, that's where a lot of those laws came from. Again, to give the government an ability to pick and choose who gets to have firearms. And in particular in New Jersey, that's the case because that's when our permitting laws came into effect. So where did we go wrong? We went wrong, years and years ago, but in particular in the 60s, the way things were scaffolded and presented to the public, they were presented in a very misleading manner in that, this is for the greater good and things of that nature. And that's also when the narrative of, the militia comes into place as well. This is just for the militia. It's for the militia. It's for the militia, right? And I'm sure you've heard that a million times where people are saying, it doesn't say anywhere in there that a sovereign citizen or a person of the country is allowed to have a firearm. And it's, well, no, it does. And let's get back to it again. It's the right of who? The people. And what shall not happen is the infringement or encroachment of those rights. So that narrative definitely changed big time in the 60s. And then you fast forward all the way through the 80s and everything that we had going on there. To present date, where did it actually go wrong? I personally can't say, but definitely from the 60s forward, the Second Amendment definitely had become under attack and the narrative changed.
I think you nailed it. I think the 60s, with everything that was going on with racial strife, as well as
Yep.
everything that was going on politically. I mean, you had some
Yep.
high profile assassination. I mean, a president gets shot, and those things create emotion, and
Hmm.
that emotion part is, it gets people whipped up. If 20 people who are having fun at a concert get shot, that's an emotional impact on people. So does that happen a lot? No, it doesn't. It hardly ever happens, but it's extremely emotional. If 20 people get shot in downtown Chicago on a Saturday night, nobody cares,
Right.
and if one person stops 20 people from getting shot because they had a gun, that doesn't even make the paper. And that emotion has taken control of and motivated far too many people. It's really tough to fight emotion with logic, with statistics. What's your experience with that? With dealing with emotion, and trying to make a logical case against an emotional reaction.
I just recently had this conversation, and this conversation was revolved around the subject of mass shootings, okay? And the individual that I was speaking to, left leaning, but not against what I had to say. They wanted to hear what I had to say. And I said to the individual, I said, well, what is your definition of a mass shooting? And she was like, well, when more than one person's been shot. I says, okay, so if somebody comes home and finds their spouse is in bed with somebody else, and in a fit of rage, they murder the spouse and the person that's with them, is that a mass shooting? Well, no, that's not a mass shooting. Okay, so then what's a mass shooting? So we start going over all this. And what I pointed her to some statistics that I read actually in a study by the Rockefeller Group. And this was a study that was funded by this conglomerate of X number of states up here in the Northeast, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, a whole bunch of states. And they had this study on gun violence done. And it kind of quietly rolled out. It wasn't like massively broadcast. And when you look at the study and you read it, the study basically says everything that you and I might say in a conversation. I mean, not 100% to the T, but the fact that mass shootings, to define them, might be defined as 4 or more people. So I make the point in the argument that 4 or more people being shot is a drug deal that's gone south, or a drive-by shooting. So talking about your 20, 23, 25 people murdered in a weekend in Chicago. So if one of those events was a drive-by shooting because of a drug deal gone south, is that a mass shooting or is that a drug deal, right? So the definitions of mass shooting being 4 or more people, depending on what study you look at, even this study with the Rockefeller Group admits that the instances of so-called mass shootings, no matter what definition you subscribe to, have gone down. And also, the coverage of the mass shootings that do happen has gone up. And they outrightly say that the focus on this is a little bit crazed in the media, and that the media is not making it, any better. They're making the situation worse. One thing that the study also said was that the knee-jerk reaction to these events, or the situation, is either people coming forward with laws to restrict rights or laws to enhance rights. Well, from my perspective, I don't really see the knee-jerk reaction of policymakers, definitely not in New Jersey, to enhance rights of the citizens when it comes to firearms. I've always seen it, we have to do something, so we're doing something. And that's why we have extreme risk protective orders. We have these magazine bans, the same stuff that you guys are dealing with.
Yeah.
So what's very difficult about the numbers in particular, perfect example is you look at your firearms deaths. So you get your total number of deaths due to firearms in the country. Well, 2/3 of those deaths are due to suicide. I'm sorry, the 2/3 number has nothing to do with gun violence. Is that number significant? Yes, it is. That number is very important. The fact that 2/3 of the deaths are attributed to suicides, that's a very important and remarkable number. But I think it's a different category. That's something else that we need to be talking about. So what about the other 1/3 of deaths due to firearms? You have accidental death, then you have homicide, and then you also have gangland violence, which I think is something else that needs to actually be addressed. So the numbers are absolutely skewed. So when you sit there and want to talk about things from a statistical analysis, let's level the playing field and explain exactly what we're looking at.
Yeah, the Biden administration, in their section on their website where they talk about gun restriction, is really what the whole conversation is. It's pages and pages of things that they want to do to stop gun violence, and the one section, it's thorough. They get way down into the weeds. We want to do this, and this to this kind of gun when these kind of people. The one section that's vague, and they basically say we don't really have a plan yet, but we'll have a plan eventually, is suicide prevention, which, as you point out, that's 2/3 of the problem. So they don't even have they barely had a few sentences that just vaguely express the notion that someday they'd like to have a plan for 2/3 of this problem that they spent, pages and pages on their website. Now, I think a lot of people look at gun safety and equate it to, well, you got to learn how to drive a car before you can have a driver's license. But I think your book and the work that you do and the articles that you write, I think there's a bigger role to play overall when it comes to gun ownership, with media, like we've talked about, politics. What do you think? What's the role for gun safety and advancing gun safety and teaching gun safety? Does it have a broader role in the bigger conversation?
I think it absolutely does. So, what do these AstroTurf groups purport to be? So, take for example, Moms Demand Action. What do they call themselves? They call themselves a gun safety organization. So, well, there's absolutely no gun safety involved whatsoever in Moms Demand Action, in Every Town for Gun Safety, in Handgun Control Inc., now branded as Brady. And I think it's important that we continue to remind people that the Brady Group is Handgun Control Inc. That's what their original name was. None of these groups are gun safety organizations. And you look at different jurisdictions, and there could be this is an argument that we could have until the sun comes up. Should we have mandatory training? Should we not have mandatory training? Should we have this, whatever? And I've talked to people on both sides of the aisle that could support or say no support for mandatory training. My personal view is I want people to be sentient enough to realize and know and understand that they need training in order to use a firearm. Like, that's a cerebral thing. Like, I'm becoming a gun owner, let me get training, right? That's what I advocate for. I advocate for responsible firearm use. I advocate for responsible ownership. But you look at all these other AstroTurf organizations, and I've reached out to a number of them over the years, and I've said, hey, I'd like to take your gun safety class. And then what do you get back in return? Crickets. Because here's the thing. Tell me where and when I can show up for a Moms Demand Action basic pistol class. I would love to take it. I would love to talk to them about becoming an instructor for them, because maybe they have a different perspective on gun safety that the NRA or USCCA or these other organizations that have been doing this for years, and like the NRA has been around since post-Civil War. If you do your due diligence about that, the NRA was founded to train people to be able to use firearms because it was an embarrassment the way the Northern soldiers performed in the war. That's why the NRA was created, was to teach marksmanship. Well, Moms Demand Action, my challenge to you is put together a class. I'll take it. I'll even pay for it. I'll pay to take your class. I would like to do that. Brady, Handgun Control Inc., I'm ready to take your class. They're rolling out a new initiative about safe storage and all these things that they're talking about on their website. Well, you know what I want to see from Brady? I want to see their Brady Handgun Control Inc. branded gun locks like the National Shooting Sports Foundation gives away for free. How many tens of millions of gun locks has the NSSF given away for free? Well, Brady Handgun Control Inc. wants to talk about these things. I want to see the gun locks that you're giving away for free on your dime, because I want you to be able to control my handgun, and lock it away. So none of these groups are actual safety groups. So to circle around, right, back to your question, firearm safety is a very pivotal role in the way we advance our rights, absolutely, because I don't care if you're left, right, or center. If you want firearms training from me, I'm very happy to train you, because I want responsible, safe gun owners. That's all I want. If you're going to be a gun owner, I want you to be safe. And I think that's definitely the direction we need to push people. And then there's the whole advocacy end. And I think advocacy will come later, once somebody gets a little bit more in tune to what's going on.
Once they build the foundation with knowledge and understanding, the rest will come. I agree with you 100% on Moms Demand Action too. We actually had a real quick, we had an interesting experience with them. San Diego County Gun Owners, we're a political organization. We do a lot of education stuff too, but we mainly are political. We set up a seminar full of attorneys and activists on a panel, and we had hundreds of people come to learn how to comply with California's laws that are ever changing when it comes to firearms. That was it. The whole thing was a seminar where you could ask questions on how to comply with the law. The venue came to us about a week prior and said, listen, we need you to put down an extra $2,000 for security, armed security, because there are credible threats. And I was baffled, and I said, well, where's this coming from? Moms Demand Action. Irony of ironies. So,
Right,
John, preparing for this interview, I watched your interview with Riding Shotgun with Charlie, which I really liked. I thought it was really great. And you could have removed your accent, and not told me where you were driving, and I immediately knew you were in New Jersey. I have some family there. I have a little bit of experience, but you were talking about how, hey, you have to be in this lane, and there's the jug handle, hit the jug handle, and I knew immediately.
If you watch the video, you see Charlie kind of look to the side. I said jug handle, and he kind of looks, and he was off balance when I said jug handle, because in Massachusetts they don't have jug handles. They have the rotaries. You got to hit the rotary,
Yeah.
So.
And I'm gonna listeners, if you're out there, if you're in the other 49 states and don't know what we're talking about with when we talk about jug handles, there's your homework. Look up jug handles. But John, you're clearly a New Jersey guy. You're a merchant marine. You're very plain spoken. You're you're a firearms instructor, firearms enthusiast. But I found it really interesting too that you spent about 10 years in the publishing industry regarding poetry. Talk to us a little bit about poetry. Tell us your experience and interest in poetry.
Briefly, so I have been involved in writing for over 20 years now, and probably around 2000, I'd say, maybe earlier, I did start to delve further into the creative writing and on writing. And that's actually where I got my start. I got my start in literature, in studying literature. And I mean, as a passion. That's not what I studied in college. It's just what I did, what I liked. And I did spend about a solid decade in the creative writing community. Not to say that I don't do creative writing now. I still do. But what I actually learned towards the end of my tenure in a more public role, because I had a reading series that I was running, and people were coming along to present their work, and I was doing readings in different places. I've been down to Virginia to do readings, Massachusetts, different places in Jersey, different colleges and universities. What I found was when you start talking about rights and conversations start to get political, the group of people that purport themselves to be all embracing and all loving and encompassing of diversity, the minute you bring forward what I consider pro-freedom ideals, you get bastardized and stigmatized, and you know, the conversations go south quickly. So my social media feed's very eclectic because of my wide swath of people that I've communicated with over the last 20 years. And I'm losing followers more and more, and they all seem to be people from the writing community. But, you know, from the writing community, I learned a lot, and I think it's a very good thing. It's a very rich cultural experience to be able to read literature and communicate about it. It's just when things got political, it's like, you know, maybe we shouldn't talk about any of that. But I did have two books of poetry that I had released in the past, in 2007 and 2008, I believe, or 8 and 9, whatever the order was there. And that's where I actually got my publishing experience, working with books and how to typeset and things like that.
So you published the books. Was the poetry original? Was it from you?
Yes, so I do have two
Wow.
poetry books out there that I wrote. One of them's completely out of print, but maybe one day I'll resurrect it.
That's amazing. One of the many things I love about the firearms community is, you know, there's this definite stereotype about who a gun owner is, and maybe it's there for a reason. Maybe it's accurate sometimes, but man, you scratch the surface a little bit, and you find some of the most interesting people. You know, I think that's great. That's awesome. I'm gonna look for your poetry. I'd love to read it. Unfortunately I'm not been trained in poetry. I don't know much about it, but I think that's awesome. That's very,
Well,
very
the,
cool.
the best thing about poetry is you don't have to have a degree from an Ivy League university to understand it. The elements and the key to poetry, it's very simple. And once you understand that, how to read it, and you don't need to go to college to do that. And that's where my opinion diverges maybe from some of the other people in the creative writing industry that have these doctorates and things like that. Is you know, the key is simple, and you can read it and enjoy it, and you don't have to be from Harvard to do that. You know, it's for everybody.
And your main career is you're a merchant marine. That's your
Correct.
career. That's who you went to college for. I would imagine. So how much time do you spend? A lot of time in other countries? How much time do you spend on a ship normally?
I primarily worked for the last decade, and then some in the Gulf of Mexico, and in the past I did some time in Africa, where I was working, you know, 5-week long hitches in Africa. But now I'm in the Gulf of Mexico.
And when it comes to self defense, are certain countries better than others that you found?
I mean, as far as that goes, since it's a merchant ship, we're not supposed to have our own weapons per se. Like, we're not militarized, so it would be on the country. Certain companies have had to hire private security, which is in the wake of the Alabama, you know, which was the largest or most famous act of piracy that we'll probably be aware of, at least in our lifetimes, was the Alabama. Post Alabama, you know, you have different security firms that will be on these ships in areas that are security concerns. But yeah, when you pull up into port, it's, you know, you're either in a sketchy area or you're not. But a lot of the ports have decent enough security, but some of them don't. You know,
Well, it must give you an even deeper appreciation, firsthand, deeper appreciation of your ability to self defense.
Oh, absolutely. That is a fact.
So, all right. So, tell us about the future. Tell us about your future as far as what you'd like to do with your writing career and the Second Amendment. Talk to us about the gun ownership future. What do you see the next 5 years down the road when it comes to
That's
you and your career and gun ownership in general? I hope to see you writing articles on victories and more freedom as well. I think I hope you're right that we're not going to see some kind of widespread gun restrictions. But I'll tell you, you live in New Jersey, I live in California, and I think we've both been telling people, hey, you got to fight it here. You can't just flee to Arizona and Texas and Florida. You can't run from this anymore. This is a nationwide problem. Stop looking for a safe space. You got to
right.
start doing the things it takes to be effective. You look at Arizona, they voted for Biden. You look at Texas, that's where Beto comes from. Beto O'Rourke, the guy that's going to take your AR. And there are 5 bills in Congress right now, all introduced by Texas Congress members. Florida's talking about an assault weapons ban. There's no more fleeing. There's no more finger pointing. You can't just say, well, all those weirdos out in California, and it's everywhere now. You have to put up the effective, good political fight wherever you are right now.
Oh, I can't agree with you more on that one. And something that, the message to people in gun friendly states, for example. So Utah, you guys are looking at getting, permitless carry. I think that's fantastic. You guys have a solid foundation with the Second Amendment. Well, Utah residents, my plea to you is to adopt some states, right? So start donating to the California organizations. I'm more familiar with New Jersey, so New Jersey could really use your help. And laws that get created in California and New Jersey do get pushed straight across the country. And it's a steamroller or a bulldozer of freedom where they're pushing and destroying and anything that's holy and good when it comes to your gun rights. So organizations like the Association of New Jersey Rifle Pistol Clubs in Jersey, or Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners, or NJ2AS. Hey, if you like what the New York State Rifle Pistol Club, what they've got going on, they've had litigation that went to the Supreme Court and argued in the Supreme Court. Granted, the case got mooted, but they're doing the work, and they're doing the work for the rest of the country. So adopting organizations like that's very important. Same thing with ANJRPC in New Jersey. We had a case, the Rogers case went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And CNJFO, they also had an amicus brief with that. These organizations are fighting for everyone's rights. It's not just New Jersey, because once the elephant in the room gets taken down, which, if you read Heller and McDonald and everything like that, the question of possession was kind of answered, but because it wasn't explicitly stated, everyone's like, well, you can only have a firearm in your home. It says, no, if you read it, it says to them, bear simply means to carry. So if you have a right to bear arms, you have a right to carry arms. And how these courts have gotten away for it, with this for over a decade of abusing, our rights, these organizations are the ones that we need to support. So if you do come from a gun freedom state, adopt an anti-gun state and send them money. We need all the help you can give.
I think it's a good idea. We should probably, John, you and I should set up a series of commercials that are kind of Sally Struthers-esque. Hey, for just 20 cents a day, you can adopt a gun owner in California or New Jersey.
Yep, it's the Feed the Gun Owners, the Feed the Freedom Movement. That's what we could call it. The Feed the Freedom Movement, or the Help Me Obi-Wan Kenobi, You're My Only Hope, right? Like states like New Jersey and California, New York, Hawaii, we need help. And it's going to come to your state. Look at Virginia, is the perfect canary in the coal mine. Virginia, untouchable.
Yeah.
The headquarters of the NRA is there. And look at the garbage that they're dealing with. So it can happen to you, right?
It can happen to you. John, I appreciate everything you're doing. I think you're doing amazing work, and thank you so much for doing it. How can people find you? What if they want to learn more about you, follow, read some of your writings, see some of your interviews, where should they go?
Okay, so the best place to get anything about me is right on my website, which is johnpetrolino.com. So if you go to www.johnpetrolino.com, take you right to my website, and on there there's a section about decoding firearms, so you can learn more about my book. There's a synopsis there. There's links of where you could buy it on Amazon. It's paperback on Amazon or Kindle. If you don't want to buy it from Amazon, look up Gun for Hire or the Woodland Park Range. They're also selling it on their website, and they're here in New Jersey. So if you don't want to buy it through Amazon, that's another place online you could buy the book. And there also are links to different articles and stuff that I've been writing on my webpage as well that you can look at. And I update it semi-regularly. I wish I could say I update it more than I do, but I don't. For example, this interview, I'll probably steal your icon and throw it on the webpage as well under Decoding Firearms. And, there's other interviews there as well. There's a contact me section. So there's a web form. If you have a question, comment, concern, anything, jump on there, plug your information into the web form, and I'll get an email and I'll respond to it pretty swiftly.
Excellent. John, thank you so much. And we'll put all those links down below so everybody will have access to it. Thank you so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it. Everybody else, thanks for watching Gun Owners Radio Magnum. Check us out online, follow us, subscribe, and like John says, join all the groups. San Diego County Gun Owners, Riverside County Gun Owners, San Bernardino County Gun Owners, and Orange County Gun Owners, or whatever state you're in, wherever you are, make sure you're financially supporting the groups that are fighting on your behalf. John, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching our Magnum show, where we dig into gun owners' topics a little more in depth. You can watch us live every Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. California time, right here on our YouTube channel, or if you're in the San Diego area, you can listen to us on 1170 a.m. We're also available on your favorite podcast platform for free. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can help restore and protect the Second Amendment, not just in California, but across the country.